Right, everyone. Check, check. All right, so let us go right into, again, I've kind of explained earlier, before we go, I hand it over to our amazingly talented and beautiful CISO panel here on stage. We do want to recognize our honorary attendees for their outsized and amazing contributions here locally in the Atlanta and Texas in cybersecurity. So without further ado, we have a little something for you. So as I call your name, come on up, and my partner in crime, Charlene, will meet you out with a nice handshake and a little something from us. So without further ado, first we have Matt Smedley from Health Admin's IT Manager. Matt, are you with us still? Here in spirit though, Matt, it's all right. Yeah, cyber threats never stop. Sometimes we have to go. So, Max Simikov from Apple, IT Internal Audit Manager. All right, wonderful, Max. Larry Moore from the Texas Division of Emergency Management, CISO. Here in spirit, thank you for being here, Larry. Ann Hines from the USAA, the BISO. All right. Shamika Fair for the Texas Secretary of State's Office, CISO. All right, there she is. Cody Collins from the City of Pflugerville, IT Director. I know him. Cheers, Cody. Clayton Brisson, Citizens Bank, IT Risk Manager. Here in spirit, of course. Amado Burgos from the National Domestic Violence Hotline, IT Director. Amado, here in spirit. Esther Alexander, Senior Manager, Security, Engineering, and Governance, Silicon Labs. All right, and this brings me to our panel aligned on stage. We have John Hanson, Randolph Brooks Federal Credit Union, AVP, IT Audit and Data Analytics. Did I get that wrong?
No, you're right.
Oh.
It just changed about three months ago.
Oh, goodness. Well, cheers and thank you. Brian Gardner, PhD, the CISO for the City of Austin. Joshua Kuntz from VISTRADA, CISO, Executive Cybersecurity, Leader and Speaker and Veteran. Dirce Eduardo Hernandez, Raices Cyber, Senior Cybersecurity GRC Manager. Oyefunke Fayoyin, Strike 48, CISO. Last and certainly not least, our moderator for today's panel, who I'm going to hand it over to now. Renaldo, McKenzie, Cyversity, North Texas, President. I also hear you have a little something going on with Cyversity, following our panel and prizes tonight. So, Renaldo, congratulations.
All right, thank you. All right.
Thank you, and it's all yours. Take it away.
Maybe. Good. All right. All right. All right, y'all ready? All right, so I think you've already been introduced, so I want to ask you to do that again. So we'll just dive right into the questions. So as far as strategic risk, as the cyber threat landscape continues to evolve rapidly, how are CISOs recalibrating their risk models and security strategies to keep up? So basically, how are you balancing reactive measures with proactive threat anticipation? Dirce, you want to take it first?
Yes. Can y'all hear me?
Yep.
So in my experiences working with several CISOs throughout my career, things have been evolving. Leaders have been recalibrating, making continuous risk-based decisions, contextual, more human-based related actions to make sure that security is helping, enabling the business, right, to make sure that those business outcomes are on par with security strategy and business strategy. So I think things have been delving into that space. So if you have those things online, security wins and the business wins. That's my take. Thank you.
All right. John?
Well, to add to that, I will expand on what we just heard to include having a better visibility of your asset, right? With AI, a lot of people don't really think about it that way, but AI is actually an intangible asset. So do you have clear visibility? Have you document what is the AI doing? What kind of data is being fed into that? Do you have minimization of the data to make sure that it's just leveraging the data that needs to be done? Data classification is important, data lineage, to be able to, again, take that information and go back to revisit your security to make sure that you have actually embedded the security controls that is needed to protect those assets.
All right, thank you, John. Okay.
Thank you. So I would say over time, started my career basically in the GRC space. I did a lot of risk work. And I think the risk landscape has changed, has evolved heavily in the last couple of days, I would say, because it changes so fast. So risk modeling, cybersecurity as a whole, I don't see it as a control function anymore, but a risk forecasting function. And we're going from static more to dynamic. Annual risk assessments are no longer sufficient. You have to keep it going. So even reporting to the board, we have a member on our board that wants us to report every quarter, benchmarking the risk, the NIST core functions around risk. Also aligning risk to business values, if you will. What is the competitive advantage for business? So helping all the functions within the company to understand what risk is, speaking the language of risk that they understand, and exposure, if you will. So if you look at it from a vulnerability management perspective, in the past I think of the number of vulnerabilities I have. Now I think of the number of exposure that I have, as opposed to burning down all vulnerabilities, but what should we be burning down? Where do we have the most exposure? So that's kind of what I see has changed in the last few days.
Good afternoon, Dr. Brian Gardner. So in the organizations that I have been fortunate to be the CISO over, whether it was private or public, now this is my third one, I've always kind of had the same approach. We in security are actually lucky because we have some really good frameworks that are already presented through NIST and ISO and things that we can leverage to build our strategy off of. And so when I go into an organization, I've been with the city of Austin now about 10 months, been in this role about 6. The first thing I come do is, okay, what is our maturity within our cybersecurity? Because cybersecurity is this huge word, right? I've done everything from an analyst to an engineer and now CISO. And really, where are we in a maturity model within each of those pieces? And if you use something like NIST and the 5 families and you break it down in there, you now have a roadmap in where you need resources and what that strategy should be. You know, do you have policies in place? Policies are very important. That's the guide rails in your organization. Do you have identity and access management? Do you have MFA? And you can start to look at it and say, hey, here is where we need to mature the organization. And here, when you take that to the board, or in my example, I have city council and mayor and city manager, I can take it to him and say, here's where we are immature. Here's where we need to apply resources, whether it's people or money. And they're really open to that. I don't have to explain to them it's on the risk model, it's a 5. I've done the other way where it's a dollar thing. They understand dollars too, believe me. You can use dollars, but you can also say, hey, we're immature here, and here's what we need to do to get MFA in place, and here's the money that we need to do it. And they're a whole lot more open to making sure that you're allocated that money. And I've been under the same city manager I have for the last 7.5 years. Mr. Brodnick's here in Austin now, and he understands that. He understands when I come and say, hey, I don't have the money to do X, Y, Z in cyber. Okay, he knows that that money is really being needed to do that, and that's how you communicate that.
Yeah, I'd say that, kind of to echo one of our earlier presenters, that we started in compliance, right? Everything was, let's get to a baseline of minimum compliance. Let's meet the statute. Let's meet the whatever the framework is. And then as we've progressed, we've gotten to a maturity kind of model of, not just are we compliant, but are we mature? And then it's progressed further into that risk base. What is the impact if we don't do it? If we don't increase our maturity, what's the impact to us? Whether that's, you're manufacturing and the production line stops, or your public service and basic emergency services aren't available. Looking at those impacts really speaks better to your boards and your commissions than the intangible of, well, we're low on this control. So, well, why? What does that matter? Well, it matters because if we have an incident, these are the results. You will not be able to do X, Y, and Z, or we won't be able to produce whatever the thing is we're trying to produce. And that will cost us in one way or another, whether it's lives, dollars, productivity, reputation, whatever that is. There's a cost that we will incur for not doing it. And it doesn't take you don't have to look very far or throw a stick. You can throw a stick and find a security breach that is close at home to what you're doing. So you don't want to be like fill in the blank. And that's been very effective in moving the needle on their priority to actually implement security.
Gotcha. That's good. So Josh, stay right there. I'm going to come back to you. And this is talking about AI and automation. So we heard the keynote earlier. He was talking about all the AI stuff. So AI is transforming both defense and attack. So how are you integrating AI responsibly in your cybersecurity program without introducing new risks?
Well, I think our last speaker was just telling us about you gotta put the controls in place. You can't just throw it out there. You also can't say no. That's been a theme throughout my career. Is you can't be the office of no. You have to be the office of KNOW. We know things. And so you can't just say, well, we're not going to do it, because it's going to happen. They'll go around you. Everybody carries a computer in their pocket. If you don't let them do it on your network, they'll do it on their own network. So you have to provide your folks a safe way to engage with the tools that will make it better. The other thing is you have to get a baseline, and I can't remember the number of times I've said this. What is the problem we're trying to solve? Well, we want AI. For what? Why do you want it? What are we trying to make better? And half the time they can't articulate what it is they want to make better. It's just, we just want to have it. Everybody else has it. We want to have it. Okay, well, why don't we come up with a problem and a use case, and then we can figure out how to implement the AI to fix that problem and not create 6 more problems.
Gotcha.
So I think this is a great topic, but it's also kind of Pandora's box, right? We've been talking about AI for a better part of 3 years. I find it really interesting topic because the feds, or the state of Texas and the feds now are really saying, hey, we want to be able to innovate with AI, right? So you can't control it. As a city or as an organization, whether it was what I'm doing here or what I did in Dallas around AI, is it's a tool. It's another tool in our toolbox as CISOs that we could leverage. And I look at it like, if you've ever been a security analyst and sitting on that front line looking at log after log after log, here's a tool that we can reduce that overhead with our security analysts. However, on the backside, we have the bad guys who leverage our tools against us. So they're taking AI and they're throwing things with AI. And I know that there was just recent breach that was totally driven by AI. So we're going to see more and more of that. So we have to figure out how to leverage the tool and how to defend against the tool. And those are the complexity as a CISO we're going to have to figure out. I can tell you it is a little bit the bane of my existence, because then every day I have somebody coming to me or a vendor coming to me and telling, hey, by the way, did you know that we have sold 12 licenses to our AI tool that is now running in your environment? And we're like, how did you even get in here? And it is a complicated, very complex issue for us to deal with. And we're going to have to figure out what is the best way to leverage it, to Josh's point, in a positive manner. What is the problem we're trying to solve? Is it just because you want a cool tool? Believe me, I love cool tools too, but is it the best tool that should be leveraged for organization? And we have to answer that and then try to protect against it.
So a bit of background before I go into the answer. I work for an organization that was in the traditional SIEM space, and now we're transitioning into agentic SOC. And when this whole transitioning started, everyone became apprehensive in the company. Are they trying to agenticize us? Are they replacing the whole workforce? And so that made a lot of team members kind of scared and kind of resistance to AI. But then now we realize that without AI, we're not going to last long. And so we build AI every day. And we had a demo recently with the CISO of McKenzie and Company. And at first, as a CISO, I would say I am not comfortable with agents running in my environment. But after the attack he just mentioned, we're like, okay, if offensive agents are running autonomously, are we going to keep human in the loop on the defense? That is going to slow down everything. So overall, we are trying as much as possible to adopt AI to run without human in the loop, because we think of security controls, we think of, we just don't want agents. We just don't want to delegate authority to agents doing whatever they want, but they have to be able to keep up with the offensive side as well. So it's not only protecting with AI, but protecting against AI, but we also have to protect with AI. So, so for us, from a third-party security perspective, I would say do our due diligence. We have policies around the usage of AI, training of AI, training the models, what should be done with it, what should not be done with it. And outside that, the responsible usage of AI, but right now we cannot not use AI because the attackers are moving super fast. So we have to be ready to defend with AI as well.
AI, right? It's like having a baby at home and you train your child to behave in a certain way, only to go to college and before you heard, Mom, I'm 8 years now, right? So, in other words, as it's already been emphasized, right, you have to be able to define what AI is going to do for you. Do you have a legitimate business reason that you should create this AI? Yes, if that is so, how are you feeding your AI? How are you feeding your AI, the training model? What kind of data is going in? Do you have minimization of data to make sure that the data that is going to be leveraged by the AI is actually what is needed to do, without throwing the AI in the middle of the data lake before you realize you are in a big trouble? Of course, we have to also include our business impact analysis to be able to determine how is it going to impact our environment, what are kind of risk that is introducing into our environment, right? You may have to go through your risk assessment to help you identify any potential risk that you have no control at this time to mitigate it. In this case, you may have to develop a new controls and everything. And of course, as we heard about it, how it's data that is flowing through our network into the AI. All of this we have to be able to develop control around it to minimize any interferences that may end up being utilized by an attacker to end up attacking our AI. So controls environment is very, very important, but you cannot have a reasonable and effective controls if you don't know the risk you are trying to mitigate, right? So business impact analysis will lead you into what you are really dealing with, and then identify the control gaps potentially you have to be able to develop the control. And visibility and continuous monitoring is very important, to have a continuous monitoring of what is going and traversing our network to be able to minimize the risk of being AI, attacking AI to attack the business. Right?
So I've been on the AI governance bandwagon for last year and a half, speaking circuit, talking about that. And I always ask the question, who has an AI policy in place? And maybe one or two hands are raised. Who has a steering committee? Who has a charter? No hands are raised. So it starts there, right? It starts at that governance level. And to everyone's point here, if there's not a justified business use case for AI enablement, what are we doing, right? So, because that introduces new risk by having those AI touch points into the environment. So it starts with the governance, again, feeds into asset management dependencies. So think SBOM, AI bomb, what the models are doing, what the intricacies of the delineation of the data that's involved with those touch points is going to help enable and have more stronger governance controls in the environment, from physical security, third-party risk, all the way through cybersecurity, red team, offensive operations. So it starts with the governance handling of your AI enablement, and then it feeds in through mitigating risks that are AI-related risks and having maybe its own register of risk in dependencies, tracking, feeding into your risk registers to have a full 360-degree view of all risk in the environment.
All right, very good. So changing gears a little bit, so kind of still not really AI specific, but talking about supply chain and third-party risk. So, I think we've all kind of heard about all of these software supply chain attacks. So for each of you, like, what controls and strategies are most effective for securing your third-party ecosystems? Yeah, go ahead.
So I'll start. Obviously, the SolarWinds kind of open up everyone's eyes, right, from that perspective. So lessons learned from that. I think the SEC just basically absolved them here recently with, basically after all the dust was settled. But there's a lot of good things to learn, right? Full transparency, accountability, communication, ironcladure on the statement of work, the contracts, getting with legal, getting with the compliance teams to make sure that that full visibility and transparency is enabled all the way through the relationship, right? Whether what the data is, so think, the data lineage, share responsibility model, intricacies and complications, right? So that's where it all stands when it comes to third party, fourth party, end party. We call them the end party relationships with our vendors. And I know Ann mentioned that recently about, okay, well, it's your job. You should make it your job to make sure what accounts, what identities are in the environment, having access to the data, working with the data, and having potential risk avenues for data leakage and data sensitivity if a breach were ever to happen. So from the third-party risk perspective, it's having full visibility, full transparency, and accountability through legal, partnership with compliance, partnership with the operational teams to just have the most well-versed, well-vetted security umbrella you can when you're working with people that are outside of control and entities that are outside of control.
Hey, just thinking about this too, you just touched on something. As far as you said, the full transparency, as far as like when it comes to fourth party and fifth party risk and stuff like that, like what accountability and what transparency are you requiring for those?
Well, it's all about the requirements from your side, right? What are non-negotiables? Look at the non-negotiables. Look at what's the non-starters on what you need. And if they were not willing to play ball or not willing to provide that as far as what your expectations are and you need, then you might want to look at another vendor, another source of a partner.
Right on. John?
To add to that, and the areas that we, non-negotiable that we have to take care of it, for example, how are you going to address that? That is where I will say that we have to tackle it from the basis, right? During the contractual period, you may have to make sure that all potential security requirement is embedded in the contract. Because usually when that doesn't happen, in case of any breaches, they say that it's your data, of course, and it's true, it's your data, right? But if we handle that within the contract, we will know when risk is actually transferred from you to the vendor. So it's very, very important to address some of these things on the contract level. And also, again, give them minimum access as much as possible for what they need to do and not to let them open. When I was with Deloitte, with SAP practitioners, a lot of times during the implementation, they want you to give them SAP all and SAP new because it's easy for them to do things. But you give SAP all, they can do whatever they want to do in your environment. You don't want to do that. So you have to be able to know what are they offering me and what kind of data I have to feed them to be able to offer them, rather than, open the whole lake for them to utilize, right? And also, of course, security, make sure it's been well defined in the contract that if this happen in certain ways, risk transfer from us, even though the public may hold us responsible, that is our data, but at least we'll be able to go back to the vendor and say, hey, this is where the risk transferred to you. So we can now, ask you to basically take off, cost or whatever that comes with it. But it has to be defined and it has to be well communicated. And of course, again, continuous monitoring is also very important.
So in my years of doing third-party security assessment, there are criteria that you use, that we've used in the past, but I realized that sometimes they're just not enough when you look at the criticality of the data, the type, the volume of the data, the financial impact of the business. So everything now falls back to legal. Legal is actually my biggest ally when it comes to third-party security. And how confident is the third party and what are they willing to commit to? Are they willing to commit to a certain percentage of availability? And if that is not in place, are they willing to take responsibility? So I work heavily with my general counsel to bake this in the contract because yes, we have our security due diligence, but security is ever evolving. Things change in the environment. There is continuous monitoring, but who is going to take on the risk? How do we transfer this risk either to the third party or to the insurance? So it all boils down to legal and how confident the third party is and what they are willing to take on from a legal perspective and how solid their internal controls are, because that's what determines what they're willing to sign off on overall.
So I'm going to take a little different approach, and I completely agree with the rest of this panel here about the proactive measures that you need in place. That's going to help you prevent. But what are you doing in the back end? Because something's bad's going to happen. It's not if, it's when, and how are you going to respond? Do you have the controls in place to respond when a third party has had a breach of your data? There's the legal aspect that you're going to go after them, but the perception is, in the cities, both cities I've worked in, they've had this multiple times. It actually happens fairly often because we're transferring large amounts of data to third parties and they're getting breached, and how that impacts us. As residents, and everybody here's a resident somewhere, it bothers you that the city, wherever you live, has had a breach. Now, was it really their breach or was it that third party? The city's always going to be, or that entity is always going to be the one that's in the headlines. So you're going to have reputational harm. Now, being a city, we're a monopoly, so you can't, unless you want to pick up and move, we're pretty much going to collect your taxes, right? But for us, there is reputational harm. We do take it personal when something happens, whether it's a third party that has had a breach of our data or not. So the proactive measures are really good, but what is that response? How are you going to handle it? Do you cut the contract with it? I'm going to tell you, when SolarWinds was hit, we cut SolarWinds right out. 2 days, gone. We had to have some other things put in place that we were monitoring with, but we got rid of it because the risk was too high. So we always come up with what is our response and how are we going to recover from that. And sometimes reputational harm is one of the hardest things to come back from.
So they've covered so much of it. I'll illuminate on a few things. One, in your contracts, not only do you need to clearly define the risks, you need to have some kind of option other than kill the contract. Because while SolarWinds is another option, you may have a software vendor who has customized a set of software to do a very specific thing, and it's critical to whatever your organization does, and you can't just turn it off. So you need to have something other than the binary, we're going to keep going with you or we're not, or we're going to cut the contract off. You have to have some kind of SLAs and liquidated damages that you can assess. You have to have some kind of incident response defined within the contract. They must tell you within X number of hours or days if they have or suspect they have. Don't let them get away with just, oh, once I've clearly defined that your data was included. No, as soon as you think you might have a problem, you need to let me know so that I can do something about it. Whether that's something where you can cut them off and quarantine them, or you have to put some additional controls in place. And the other one, and we talked about this a little bit, the third, fourth, nth party, don't rely on them to tell you. Have another tool. There's quite a few of those tools out there, third-party risk management tools out there that can show you those interdependencies, that okay, I know that I have a contract with this party, but then they also, in order for that piece of software to work, upline from them are Oracle, Microsoft, whoever it is, or other software providers or other, software library providers, whatever that is upline from them. Don't rely on them to tell you what their upline is. They probably don't know. And don't take the sales guy's word for it. Make sure that when you're doing those security controls, negotiations, and the terms and conditions, that it's not just the lawyers in the room, but you have somebody from their side that actually does it so that they can answer the question properly. Because the sales guy will say yes to anything because they want the commission. And so they'll check any box you tell them to check, whether or not it's true. And so you find that out later, well, you've already had a breach. And now you got to figure out, am I going to do liquidated damages? Are they going to institute cybersecurity insurance against them? What is the thing that I have? What's my remedy? When you could have had a preventative measure to figure out what they really had because you had the right people in the room. And they don't like to let the propeller heads into the room with contract negotiations, but they at least need to redline it and say, yes, we do have those controls, or no, we don't have those controls. Don't say we do, we will be liable. So
I wanted to add a little, and thanks for touching on that. So it goes back to legal. Okay, I agree with you on the reactive, but reactive keeps us alive as cybersecurity. Proactive keeps us ahead. And being proactive here, I have worked in the industry, and now I am on the vendor side. And our biggest incentive is customer contract. For protecting our data, for compliance, for security, everything we do now, it's amazing how I see the shift from when I was the person that signs off on the vendors, and now I am the vendor. So for every compliance, I just jumped through hoops to get PCI DSS, AOC, and all that assessment done because a customer wanted it, and without it, they were going to churn. So I was like, oh, then I need to team up with customers more so they can request for these things and we can get to be more secure. So customer contract and legal requirements, whatever they have in those red lines, help us as a company to be secure. And this is coming from the vendor side of the house. So being proactive when it comes to third party and redlining it before you even sign the contract is always the best way to get ahead.
Right on. All right, so we're going to change gears a little bit and talk about talent and burnout, which is real, leadership. So, do we really think it's a cybersecurity talent shortage? Is it ongoing? Do we really think so? So my question, you take it first, Josh. How are you attracting, retaining, and upskilling talent while also addressing burnout and team fatigue?
absolutely. So I'm currently not having to do that as I switched careers, but up until very recently, I was a CISO and hiring manager for a state agency, and I had been doing that for 24 years. And throughout that time, I tried to use a non-traditional method to bring people in. I mean, sometimes, you have to have a senior analyst and you got to fill that higher position. But every opportunity I had to hire the lowest level position I could, I took it. And I was very liberal with my minimum qualifications screening and related experience. I always made sure all of my job descriptions had things in there about related experience, not just direct experience, so that I could interview those people who had aptitude. That's not the experience. You know, attitude and aptitude are 10 times more than experience, 9 times out of 10, because you can train them. And having a training program, having an incentive program, having a career ladder where I did have, you know, multiple levels of job classifications that I could hire somebody lower, and then they had an expectation of, well, how long does it take to get from level 1 to level 2, and what do I have to do? Setting that clear expectation up front of, these are your job duties, this is how much independence I expect you to have, this is how much initiative I expect you to have, and if you do these things, this is the time frame in which you can expect to move up. And if you don't do these things, you're going to stay stagnant. But that gave it, having that clear expectation and then that feedback, you cannot, the feedback cannot be on the annual performance review. The feedback needs to be continuous. Weekly, monthly, quarterly, whatever your cadence for one-on-ones, you have to engage your folks and figure out where they're at. What are their ambitions? Do they want to be technical? Do they want to end up being a CISO? If they want to, you know, and then gear their training and the things that the assignments you're giving them to the direction they want to take. Some people never want to have to manage people, and that's fine. We need those folks. Get them as much technical training as you can. Get them into courses. Get them into, come to, you know, conferences. Make sure they have those opportunities. And I was very successful in hiring during a drought of cybersecurity professionals and just bringing people along. Either they'd been a help desk or server or network person and they wanted to move into cybersecurity. I've had people that were in finance that wanted to move into cybersecurity, and I helped them do that. But it's having that attitude and that aptitude and really recognizing that to bring non-traditional people into the profession.
Yeah.
So I agree with Josh on the approach. I've been lucky both places. I've always had a full team. Never had a real challenge, but I can tell you what I've seen is that if you take this approach where you're bringing in young talent, there's a lot of hunger there. They have a lot of zeal. They bring a lot of energy to your teams. You still have to have some balance with people that are very technical and have had some experience in understanding the tech. But if you balance those two things, you can have a really rock star team. I was just with a vendor in here, and he's like, I couldn't believe how great your team is, how your security team is. And the truth is, I didn't do anything. I just brought them there, right? And they do all the hard lifting. But that balance and finding the young talent, there's plenty of them out there, whether they're coming from in the organization. I met with the veterans group, you know, the veterans coming out of the service, great place to look for them. Coming out of the technical colleges, great place to look for them. They all have all this energy that they will bring to those security teams. So is there a shortage? I don't know if I would say that there is. I think that we have the ability to bring those people in. I'll tell you in government, and Josh can attest to this, it's like a headache to hiring people, but if you can get through all of that, you can hire some really, really good people. And then the other side of that coin is start to plan, for me, is that they're probably going to leave because we can't pay what private pays. But if we understand what that churn is going to be, yeah, we'll retain 1 or 2 of them, but a bunch will leave and they'll go to a private organization, make 10 times what they're making here. But we have leveraged their talent and their excitement in that period that they were here. And we get the next one that has as much excitement. So that's been my approach.
So Josh and Brian already talked about attracting, so I won't talk about that. But 2 things I would touch upon around burnout and retaining talent. The first is automation, and the second is culture. I'm going to use, I think some of you here met a woman that just left here. Her name is Manju. She was my manager. And I was in the GRC space doing GRC work. I was a rock star. Everyone liked me doing GRC, but I hated it. It was meaningless work to me at some point because I've done it over and over and over and over again. I got bored doing it. And people get burnt out when they're doing meaningless work to them. So I needed something new. And this woman joins the organization, and then she asked me, what do you like to do? I'm like, oh, wow, that is a very healthy question for me. And I told her what I wanted to do. I wanted to do something I'd never done before. And she gave me the opportunity. She transitioned me from doing GRC to security engineering and architecture. And suddenly I became a whole different person. I wanted to get to work every day. When it's 7 o'clock, I'm like, oh my goodness, I need to turn on my computer. So when team members do meaningless work and we're not having that conversation with our team members, and if there's any work that has to be done more than once or twice, automate it. Because that repetition gets people bored, and that's where burnout comes in. So automation being number one. The second is culture. Are we intentional with our team members? Do we really care about them? Do we set up team events? Do we get to know them genuinely? Some team members don't even know how to pronounce your full name. They never tried. So what is the culture of the company like? What is the intentionality around work-life balance? Do we have conversations? Do we have mentorship? Do we mentor ourselves? Do we cross-train? So the culture of the organization, and sometimes it may take one person to change the culture. It may take just you to change the culture, but that's a whole bigger conversation. But for me, my answer has always been two. Automate the meaningless work so you don't bore me, and then how much fun are we having at work? How are we doing what we love to do in a way that we love to do it?
Man, that was a lot. I don't
Yeah,
know how you're going to follow
this is
that.
great. I don't, what I'm going to add to everything that is, I think they're all fantastic. It's something that it's going on right now with me, right? As they were presenting this, recognition, right? I said my position has changed, and it has changed for the past three years. So I'm going to give you something before I left internal audit to where I'm working right now. So when I was leaving internal audit, I talked to the leader of the internal audit, and I say, I'm leaving here to go to InfoSec and manage IAM right now. My recommendation is that do not bring any director here. We have somebody internal is very capable of being a director. Don't bring anybody here. This is how we retain people. You don't bring people in and work from scratch or work so hard, get to a point, and then all of a sudden you have a director come in, and then how's the person gonna be happy and continue in that position? And I think I'm gonna put her on the spot. That's that lady over there. So I told my boss, do not bring director, and I'm so glad that they listened to me and they retained that position for her. Now I went to IAM and I met my team, and nobody even wanted to smile. It was terrible. 2 weeks, right? Everybody has 6 o'clock face, right? And if you know me, if I'm not laughing, you will not come close to me. I look so mean, terrible person. I went there, I had my first meeting, and nobody wanted to talk. So finally I said, no, I have to find a way to break this tie, right? So I just let them know that, hey, I'm here with you. I want you to know that I am part of you. And I want you to know that I'm here for your success, because if you succeed, I succeed. If the executive management see me to be John succeeding, it's because you're succeeding, because you are doing most of the work. And second, you have been doing this for the past 5 years, even though it's not going the way it should be going. You've been doing for the past 5 years. Give me information about what is the problem, what are your challenges, and how do you think we can improve this? Finally, on my 3rd week, I had a little bit of smile, so I felt like, hey, I'm getting somewhere, and they started talking. One of them actually told me, the key people, they told me that they were planning to leave because they feel that they're alone, nobody really care about them and everything. And I say, hey, IAM is very, very critical process for the organization. So I'm here for you to succeed, and so let's talk. I realize that they don't even have a whole lot of knowledge about the whole life cycle of identity and access management process. So right away, I realized that, hey, one of the needs is to give them the training that they needed. Two, I felt like there was no good communication strategy. In fact, if your IAM is going to work well, you have to be able to communicate to the whole organization, because individuals have different assets that you have to bring into the process, right? So we decided to put a strategy in place to communicate. I started talking to different departments, how we should work together to make sure that we have develop and design the matrix where we can ingest into our tool to be able to have a clear visibility and continuous monitoring of the assets and everything. So that was another one. So the first 2 ways we were able to secure a platform for the staff to actually train to understand what IAM is. Another thing we saw that there was really not a leadership function. There's no, everybody is working, so nobody was listening to anybody. So another thing that we know through emotional intelligence and some observation, I identified 2 people. The one would be on technical side and one would be the governance aspect of it. And within 6 weeks, something that they gave me 6 months to go and fix, 6 weeks, we have cleared all the backlogs and everything. And literally one of the, the leads came to me and said, "You are the one who have made us feel like we are important." 6 weeks later. And it's all communication. It is very important. We are human. I'm almost 60, but I will go down and we just laugh. We crack jokes, we laugh and everything. So they felt happy even when they have to long work, because a lot of the process is manual right now. We're trying to change that. But it made them so happy to do what they're doing, and that made us get a lot done. So value them, as you're saying. Don't just bypass them and bring somebody who's a well experienced and everything that they keep sitting there. I don't like that process. I feel like you have to work with them as they develop their skill, give them the opportunity also to grow in their career, and that is how we retain them and make them happy.
All right.
I mean, this one's interesting to me. I teach, right? I've been teaching cybersecurity since 2012, and I've seen things evolve. And the way I see it is, to earlier point, that, everyone has to understand that they have skin in the game. They can't get their job done without working with someone like myself from GRC, security architecture, engineering, developers. So have that, make sure that everyone understands that everyone's helping each other, enable each other, not being a derailer and a blocker, right? From the teaching and the burnout and the talent perspective, we need to give the opportunities to those people that are hungry. Like I said, we've been in situations where we've been laid off, we've been, moved, and different situational things are happening within the environment. But how to have that human perspective to say, I've been in there before, I've been an analyst before, I've been a security architect before, I worked with leadership before, I've been in the boardroom. Having that, perspective of being human, having that human perspective and feeling is a big driver to success, to build that camaraderie with teams, especially remotely. I mean, I'm in San Antonio, my team's in East Coast, West Coast. Nobody's really here, right? So we can't really get together. So you have to have that level of self-awareness to be a team player, be that, having the sense that you have skin in the game. We're trying to all help each other out. An artifact, an evidence, a log, like we all have our bad days, but if we understand that we have to do something for the greater good and the common good for our jobs, to keep the lights on, right, to continue to feed our families, it really kind of puts into perspective that, this is what we're here to do and succeed.
All right, sounds good. So what I'm hearing is building a strong security culture built on trust, right? That's when it comes down to it, right? So you can trust one another. Once you feel like you can trust them, right, each other, things will be a lot better, right? Cool. I don't know how much time we have left. Yep, so I think we're going to wrap it up with that being said. So that being said, I want to thank you all for attending this panel with these distinguished guests, so give them a hand. All right, and yes, I do have an announcement. Cyversity Austin is having a gala tonight, right? And it's at 6 p.m., so it starts at 6 p.m., and it goes to beyond, so. Right. So it's going to be at the Fairmont Austin rooftop, so do they need to register? I can't remember. I think you do need to register, but don't worry about it. Just show up. The invite is on Eventbrite if you are interested in showing up. So that being said, I guess I'll turn it back over to you all. And once again, thank you all.
Okay, I know this was already said, but I'm sure you